All right, this video will be on how to refurbish the door caps on a 1977 MGB Roadster. The door cap looks like this. It's a piece of wood with a vinyl covering. It has the inside windshield fringe that keeps the window from rattling, and this goes on the inside of the door right here. See, these little screws right here are how it's affixed, and you have two more up here. That's where it's connected in, and they're available. You can buy these just to replace them outright. You can buy them at Moss for a pair for $245. What I'm hoping to explain in this video is how to save quite a bit of money. I think that overall we can probably replace or refurbish these for about $50 each, maybe less. No, altogether $50 altogether in replacement parts. So some of the problems you'll run into on these is the chrome pieces get dechromed and very badly rusted, and as is the case with so many things that are exposed to weather, the screws, they're not stainless steel. They just use cheap, whatever steel screws, and they rust and break off. In this case, this one will have to be extracted. The other one here is just a standard wood screw, but you can see when you apply rust to wood, that now needs to be drilled out, and we're going to put something else in there. So we're going to use threaded inserts. Here's an example of a threaded insert. It has knife edge screws on the outside, and it has machine threads on the inside. And so basically you drill out these holes, you drive this in there, so now you have a good threaded insert in there. The trick of that is to get that spacing perfect. And I'm going to demonstrate how to do that a little later on. When you're taking this apart, you should be aware that some parts are available. Obviously, these chrome pieces are available. This looks so much better than the old one. But you can buy these available. I'll put the part numbers in the description. And these fuzzy wipers, these are also available. I'll also have the part number available on that. The part that's not available that you should be very careful with when you're pulling out the staples is this rubber piece, plastic piece, if you will. It goes under the wing windows, so it doesn't really interact with the window, so it doesn't have to have a fuzzy thing on it. But it's basically a bead, so that you have an interaction between the vinyl and the glass, or the vinyl and the door. Here you can see on the other one, I've taken it out. We're just going to clean this up and staple it back in place along this one when we get it in there. So this is just the beginning here. I'm gonna show you how to take all this apart, and then be cautious on how to resolve the problems with these screws, and how to get them in there nice and neat, and then save a big bunch of money. If you have some time, you don't mind pulling some vinyl and going through the extra effort, you can save some money on it and have a little bit more pride in ownership. So the problem was, when you take these off, the old ones, they get old and rusty, and like in this case here, the wood had deformed because of the rust, and you couldn't get the threads off, and so the threaded insert came out when you tried to unscrew it. So you can't get this out without destroying the cap. So it kind of just becomes a destructive repair. So you end up having to do some repairs on here anyway. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is, instead of having a wood screw and a threaded screw with a threaded insert, I'm going to convert both of these to use the same size screw with a threaded insert. And the trick with that is the threaded insert needs to be perpendicular. It has to be absolutely straight, and you can't deviate the hole left, right, or up or down. You can't make that hole change its dimensions because it's got to match up with these when you put them back on. So that's kind of the trick. So here's the trick with, I don't have a drill press, so that's another disadvantage. But what we're going to do is I have 2 drill bits, one that's already on there. This is going to be the thickness of the inside of that threaded insert. The inside, at the very inside of those threads, not the outside, but the inside of the threads, that's for the smaller screw. The bigger drill is to make a sleeve in this piece of 2x4. And the idea being is I would just put this threaded insert right into that sleeve and it will stay vertical when you're screwing it in. The other thing to look at on here is these are brass, and these threaded inserts have a slot so you can use the standard screwdriver. I did some testing and I would really advise against using that slot to screw it in. It's a lot better for you to go ahead and put a screw in, do it upside down, and drill it in with a Phillips down through the shaft. All right, so like I said, I don't have a drill press, so I'm going to be using this 2x4 as a guide to make sure that I'm drilling these holes absolutely perpendicular to the other piece of wood. And so the trick with that is now I have to drill a perpendicular piece, right? It's hard enough to say I need to drill something perpendicular, but how do you have to make your guide perpendicular. The trick here is that you can use some optics. I'm just going to make a little mark. There's already a mark right there. So I'm going to put this right over that mark right there. Okay. Now, if you use an old DVD or there we go. I don't know, those any of you old farts who still have AOL, you can see how easily that is not lined up. When it gets lined up, you can see, okay, that's vertical. Okay, it's going to be really close, but it won't absolutely be perfect. But it gives you the ability to get some better optics so that you can get a really good angle on it. And then you can look at the other direction, get that there. Look at this direction and get that there. Once you have it the way you feel confident with it, go ahead and put it down. As you're drilling, you can keep it nice and level, and just gives you just a little bit better optics, so you can make sure you make a good straight drill hole. Okay, so I got my holes drilled, and I'm ready to start running these pilot holes through here. So you can see I've transcribed some lines to the centers of these holes, to the edges, so that I can turn the corner on them so you can see where they're at. And likewise, I've done the same thing with my guide. So, and you can see I've turned the corner on those as well. Whoops. So you can see where they're at. So I'm going to go ahead and line these up. We're going to line them up and drill those holes. Okay, so there you go. Using a piece of electrical tape as a depth guide, I've got that 1/2 inch thick, which is the depth of this insert. The hole is drilled to the inside thickness of those threads. And the next trick here is to get this threaded in there and keeping it vertical, right? And that's where the next hole goes. The next part of this guide will work. So the idea here is that you put a screw into it, right? And then you just run it through that guide hole, and that will keep it standing vertical. I don't know if you can see. It'll keep it standing vertical and perpendicular as you screw it in, that will keep it also from wobbling back and forth or messing with the wood, and you can really put a lot of pressure into it so you get a good bite on the teeth. So I'll take a picture as we progress. So there you go. 1 down and 7 more to go. I would expect some chipping like this. It went in pretty smooth. I would recommend putting a little lubricant, maybe some beeswax around those threads when it's going in. It went in pretty smooth, but I think maybe I could have avoided that chip if I had been a little bit more polite with it. This next one will be a little easier to drill because it's a bigger hole to begin with, but I have to extract the old threads out of it, so it's going to have its own challenges. But I'll move on to the next step after we get all these drilled. Okay, so at this point, once you get these in there, I would suggest that you dry fit it in this before you do your vinyl, because once you put the vinyl over the top, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to adjust these up and down, left and right. You can see right here, it looks like I got one screw in each one. This one looks good, and this one looks good. It'll seem pretty logical when you're putting these back together. They have different shapes, but this one conforms with this curve, and this one here conforms with the shape of the door right here. So it'll make logical sense when you start fitting them in place. But do dry fit them before you do the vinyl, so that you can make any adjustments that are necessary. Okay, so this one here is all done. It's all ready. But you can see this other one here. It's in some pretty sad shape. The wood is split at the end. You can see actually you can see this piece wants to come out altogether. So I'm going to have to do some reinforcement. I'm going to, you can notice in here, the screw is missing out of that one. This one here is barely able to give me a good mark of where it's going to be, and the wood is split, a lot of rot in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where the holes are going to go, and I'm going to reinforce this with epoxy. Once the epoxy is dry, then I'll re-drill the holes to make sure that they're the right size, and then we'll drive the threaded inserts in there. On the opposite side here, there's an additional challenge in that on this one, you can see I had to drill the old screw out even just to get the thing off the door, and this screw is broken off inside as well. There's some stuff stuck in there. So there's going to be some preliminary work to do before I even get to the point where I can put those in there. And again, that's what you're dealing with old wood. And when you're looking really close to the end grain, you see this one right here has started to push out as well. So we're going to set that all back in place, and we're going to reinforce that with epoxy so that it gets reinforced and it has a lot of strength for those screws to hold onto. If you're just to put those screws into this nasty old wood, it wouldn't hold and the thing would vibrate off. It's hard enough to work with wood and metal, but once you start opening and closing and slamming the doors, you get a lot of vibrations that will cause this just to fail straight away. So on this end, the wood was damaged really bad, and I have not yet done the epoxy filler, but I also don't have faith in the location of this hole as it compares to the previous installation. So what I'm going to do is I went ahead and put the threaded insert in the top side, which was a bit more reliable, and even it, I don't know if you can see, even it, you see I'm going to have to backfill that with some epoxy so that it doesn't come out. But it wasn't reliable location. So once I get this in place, it'll be harder for me to have to go back and change it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mount it right into the door with the one hole, and line up. So you can see even if it's off a little bit, it won't match up in the door. I'm going to line up where it lines up in the hole in the door, and then make a mark, a registration mark, so that I can tell where it goes, and then we'll be able to mark where that hole is so that I can drill that out. Okay, so I got this side here connected, bolted in. It's snug but loose so that it can adjust. And on this side over here, you can see I've got one screw, and I've used a piece of tape to mark where that, you can't really use a pencil on the chrome, but a piece of tape that will mark where the end of that wood is supposed to line up. And down here, I've drawn a little line to match up where the end of the bend of the chrome is, so that It'll give me a good registration mark, so when I take it up to the workbench, I'll be able to know exactly where that hole is going to go. All right, so here you can see I've got it back out of the car. I've got the tape right there, and my registration mark matches up right there with the elbow of the chrome. And I have already drilled a pilot hole through the chrome, so that I know it's absolutely going to match up with this one when I put that in there. Okay, so I've got this in place. It matches up. I know that it's going to be the right registration marks, and everything's going to line up inside the car. You see I've added the epoxy filler to those gaps in the end of the wood that was missing or had rotted out. One quick note, there's a lot of these different threaded inserts. I highly recommend that you use the brass ones, only because it's a bimetal solution. Brass won't rust to steel, so even if these stainless steel screws that we're putting in there have wear problems or they rust out, and it's a lot less likely because we're replacing them with stainless steel. But by connecting them to brass, they won't rust. There is some problems that people talk about with mixing two different metals, in that there's a electrical conductivity that happens between them, but in this case it's connected to wood. It doesn't cause any problems with that, so you won't have an issue with that. I highly recommend using the brass ones on here. So let's talk about the vinyl. This one here is done. See, it looks brand new. You'd never know that this was on the down low, a really cheap budget fix. It looks really nicely done and professional. The trick with the vinyl is to get some spray adhesive. We have some high-tech spray adhesive. It's contact cement, and you spray it on the cushion. And then you spray it also on the vinyl, on the cloth side of the vinyl, and you lay it in place. And once you lay it in place, then you can flip it over, and you pull it nice and tight over the edge and staple it, and then you pull it over nice and tight and you staple it, and you work your way around. When you get to these corners that are curved and there's different contours, the vinyl stretches quite a bit. So you pull it over, and in this case you can see you gather up the extra material and you staple it, right? Using the staples from a regular staple gun like this for the vinyl works really great. They have a good surface area, they grab a lot of material, and they bite. And they're really easy to put in there. The vinyl goes underneath these, so you have to take them off before you put them on, right? But you can see on the corners, you fold it up and you staple it, and then you do like a hospital fold, and you can see there's material up underneath here, and you fold it at a diagonal, and then you fold it up and staple it. And once you get all that gathered in there, the last two parts are these beads. This bead here is just a decorational bead. It goes where the wing window is, and it will look like that when it's in place. And so there's just a fixed length with that. You put the old one back in. I don't think you can buy those. This is the replacement brush wiper that goes on the inside of the window. These come extra long, and the idea behind that is that each car has a little bit different wiper length in the window, and it might have an adjustment. The window will move back and forth based on however the door is adjusted. So they give you an extra long length in this. So when you put it in the door, take it over to the car here. When you put it into the door, it will look something like this. This matches up here. You can see the beading right there. And then the beading matches up right here, and then this silver strip with the brush wiper goes up to here, and you just mark it right there, and you cut it off where the end of the window is, and you don't want it to extend off into the pink there, but you want it to extend the entire length of the window. So each one of those has to be done separately, and I would really recommend that you wait until you do your final installation before you mark and cut that. But it's really easy. It's just a small piece of aluminum that will cut really easy with a pair of snips. All right, so last little comment here before I close up. When you're putting this fuzzy brush strip in here, you notice how you can't see the staples. The staples are actually, you can barely see the indentation right here of a staple that went through there. You don't want to put the staple up. You don't want to put the staple up on the bead because you'll be able to see that from the top. You want to put the staple in right through the brush. And in this case, that's a lot of material to go through. So I used a bit bigger staple. This is a 1/2 inch long staple, and it doesn't go through with your standard stapler. I actually have a pneumatic stapler for that, and it pops them through there with no problems. But that's the only thing where you'd need like a special tool. You can barely see a dent here where the staple is hidden by the brush. And I didn't put too many in there. There's only like about 6 or 8 in there. But that's the last little thing to consider. After that, everything's done. So with these steps and the part numbers that I'm listing in the description, you will be able to take your old, nasty, dilapidated, rusted, rotted, all the different bad adjectives I can come up with, and you can update those and make them look really nice for just $50 and a couple hours of labor. So there you go. These are conversion of the door caps on a 1977 MGB Roadster.